四川乐山市洪灾，整个城市内涝严重，街道变河流。
大家好，我是乐山广播电视台新媒体中心的记者佳怡。我现在所在的位置呢是在乐山市市中区梅西百货附近。我们从现场可以看到，这边的群众呢正在进行转移。
早点查哦，黄家车子啊。
长江2020年第5号洪水今日过重庆主城，长江重庆段多站超保。洪水漫上重庆主城，这是1981年来重庆经历的最大一次洪水。
大家晚上不用去看涨水了，已经淹到路上来了，你看，看到没得？那看水的人全部都遭要起走了，堵惨了南滨路现在。
四川宜宾一村庄被洪水淹没，广场路面坍塌，多辆汽车被埋。台风登陆珠海，中心最大风力12级，珠海启动防风1级响应。8月19日上午7点半，三峡大坝历史首次10孔泄洪，下游危机加剧。洪水淹没村庄，1000多人被困水中，无官方报道。网友实地拍照发微博也被删。中粮集团领导和上海市要员被中纪委调查。招商银行农产品2个副总裁被主动请辞。人民日报威胁口吻发文：美国想脱钩，门儿都没有。美驱逐舰穿航台湾海峡，解放军海空兵力全程跟踪监视。环球网继续黑美国，称美军基地变美军基地。8月18日，台湾驻索马里兰代表处正式挂牌，越来越多的国家加入反共阵营。
中国老板援助西非的大米，免费提供大米，3万车呀，就装3万车呀，都是援助西非的。
走不了了也，不是，
你不能为老公穿。
干啥呀？
你打一个，
你怎么的？
你打一个，
你坐着，你
还能说这话呀？
坐着，
听你说聋呢，还活懂。
老人家，你还是下去吧。你这些年轻人上班都不容易。
别闹了，这么多人指着您去，你不难受吗？
下去吧，快点吧。
上车得扫码，扫那个2维码，知道吗？不知道啊？你有没有手机？没有手机来跟我下来，来，下车。现在不扫码不让坐公交车，这是政府规定，明白吗？我电话号给你发过去，有点是吧？嗯。我电话号给你发过去，完了你。
抖音。
隔离呀，就还得隔离呀，这隔离你管呀，你是老板你管这管。
10年了。天津法院就是到时候作为扯皮，就是给你不管，贪污腐败。
这么长时间，10年都过去了，没人管吗？
我们每次去了，那法官就是给你胡说八道，就说给你推着拖着，他就是不跟你说管。
都官商相护，特别扯皮， 都在参赛呢，给你个表，填完之后走，走了就没事了。
看你们俩长得挺像双胞胎的，那你们告人家得有证据啊！你
是我们是双胞胎兄弟，我为我哥告，我哥在化名，证据材料我是齐全的，是天津公安机关为了包庇那个真凶叫马新龙，隐藏了物证凶器，然后伪造那假证人，
诬陷我哥的，
诬陷我哥，
我们两个当时因为就在现场，就看见那个事情。
他是故意制造冤假错案。
当时这个案子的时候，你们没有请律师吗？
当时有律师把材料什么都整好了。律师说这个案件肯定是冤假错案。到这上开庭的时候，律师把材料什么都没有读完，人家法官就说休庭，就回来就给判了啊。律师没有办法，律师说我们的权利就这点权利啊，现在你没有办法，怎么办？
中国冤假错案特别多，哪一个冤假错案全都有律师，但权利在谁啊？在法院，法官说想怎么判就怎么判，咱老百姓拿着证据白纸黑字的，法院认可就是证据，不认可了连草纸都不是。
要是没有人给你讲理，
你们是哪里人啊？
我们是陕西人。
那现在这个事情也不能着急，得慢慢来。10年过去了，
他们这就欺负我们外地人。
他这是故意欺负外地人，草菅人命，故意制造的这个冤假错案，我们也没有办法了。
哎，警察来了！
这在干嘛呢？走，法院是你们走的地方吗？赶紧走。
The race for TikTok's US operations could have a new contender, Oracle. According to Britain's Financial Times newspaper, the tech company has held preliminary talks with the app's Chinese owner, ByteDance. Oracle is reportedly considering buying TikTok's operations in the US, Canada, Australia and New Zealand. The FT said on Monday that Oracle was working with some US investors that already have a stake in ByteDance. There was no immediate comment from ByteDance, TikTok or Oracle on the FT report.
A former CIA officer living in Hawaii has been arrested and charged with espionage. Officials say Alexander Ma left the CIA in 1989 and lived and worked in Shanghai, China, before arriving in Hawaii in 2001. According to court documents, for a decade, Ma and his relative conspired with each other and with the People's Republic of China, or PRC, to communicate national defense information. The court documents go on to say after he moved to Hawaii, Ma worked for the FBI and regularly sent back classified information to China in exchange for money and gifts. Officials say Ma was eventually caught when he began communicating with an undercover FBI agent who he believed was a representative of the PRC.
Just last week, Alexander Ma met once again with the undercover FBI employee. During the meeting, Alexander Ma accepted $2,000 and stated, among other things, that he wanted, and I quote, the motherland to succeed.
It is a sad and somber day in Hawaii and the entire country when a U.S. citizen chooses to violate his solemn oath of protecting the United States and its citizens from a hostile foreign government.
Ma is scheduled to make his first appearance in federal court tomorrow. If convicted, he faces a maximum penalty of life in prison.
Israel and the United Arab Emirates may be reaching a historic normalization of their diplomatic ties, but Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's office said on Tuesday it remains opposed to future arms sales to the Gulf country. And that includes reports in Israeli media that the Trump administration is planning a giant sale of F-35 fighter jets to the UAE in Jerusalem, and representatives of the UAE government did not immediately respond to requests for comment. Netanyahu's office said that they oppose deals that would, quote, tip the balance.
The largest order of corn in history. Did you know that last week? From of all groups, China. How about that? China, which, I don't know, it makes you think a little bit, doesn't it? Huh? But China made the largest order of corn twice over the last week. So how does that affect an order like that when you have such damage to the crops, to the corn crops?
Well, I think last week when the price of grain went up quite a bit, it helps, but then that's going to help those people that have grain to sell, but the farmers that have been hurt with the damaged crop, the only help.
Are they able to fulfill an order like that? Will they be able to get an order that big?
If that's your question, the answer is yes, because we have so much carryover from the year before.
Oh, that's very good.
Yeah.
That's the two biggest orders of corn in history we got. That's because they think I'm not happy, and I'm not. I'm not happy at all. Just the
president carrying out all of his responsibilities, many, including that of commander-in-chief. One of the carrier strike groups that the president has ordered into the South China Sea, the USS Ronald Reagan, is back now in the South China Sea with its strike force amid heightened tensions between the United States and China. That strike group includes the Reagan aircraft carrier and 2 destroyers, 1 cruiser. Commander Joshua Fagan said the group is, quote, ready to respond to any contingencies throughout the region. Last week, China carried out live fire exercises nearby the region, including launching torpedoes. This is getting a little more serious. It's also a very impressive display of power and force in the region. What is your expectation?
Well, I think we've seen since June the duel of the carrier exercises. The Chinese are not backing down, and in many ways, I think this firing of torpedoes in recent days is an escalation. The Reagan actually is based in Japan, as you know, so it's coming down to the South China Sea, but it's doing so according to international law that we don't seek permission from China to operate in the South China Sea. At the same time as the carrier maneuvers.
Well, this is basically telling China to go to hell. This is not seeking permission. It's telling them to go to hell, is it not?
I think what's more provocative than the carrier operations are the destroyers that go inside Chinese claimed territories in these features of the sea that we don't recognize, that the UN has denied China's claim. Mm-hmm. That's really the provocative aspect of our Navy operations.
So let's reset really quickly about this for the audience that isn't aware of this. Why this is such a big deal? Because I'm not even the type of guy to follow what I would call local events in this level of detail. But it's not a local event, is it? It is an event that has global ramifications.
It most definitely will have global ramifications. I mean, the Yangtze River Valley provides about 25 to 40% of the Chinese food. It also provides 80% of all pharmaceuticals, 80% of all chemicals produced in China are along this valley. And we cannot state how devastating these floods are to China right now. We'll throw up some B-roll of the animals, Vish, if you will, just to give people an idea of how this is impacting livestock, how this is impacting agriculture. One of the interesting things is that there's a huge blackout right now inside China concerning the news. And there's certainly been some various kinds of data that they're pushing out that doesn't seem to make any sense. For example, the flow up by Chongqing which is well west of the Three Gorges Dam. They have that right now at 66,000 cubic meters per second. So that's the equivalent of enough water to fill the Capitol Dome twice every second. Now, down at the Three Gorges Dam, they say that the water flow is less than that. But right now, they are releasing from the Three Gorges Dam almost 48,000 cubic meters per second. Now, if we remember, about 10 days ago, they claimed that they released 35 to 40, and that created massive flooding downstream. What we're going to see probably today is that Chongqing is going to overflow its banks at the city. This is really sad for the Chinese people. I'm very concerned for them. And what the Chinese government came out yesterday, Raheem, this is very interesting. They sort of described what was necessary on the part of the dam operators, because there's multiple dams on the tributaries leading into the Yangtze River. So they're getting almost as much as 15 inches of rain potentially on the western end of the drainage for the Yangtze River. So above Chongqing, above the Three Gorges Dam. And they've asked all the dam operators that they have to basically have a delicate balance. They're announcing this to save people downriver. They've told people in Sichuan province, anybody living on the first floor has to move to the second and or third floor because of potential emergency flooding. Now, the reason why this is emergency flooding, Raheem, is because in order to save Wuhan, in order to save Chongqing, they have to release this water into flood zones. Most of these flood zones end up being secondary cities and really agricultural areas, and these people are getting flooded out. Now, when we talk about the food consequences of this, I think there were some really big tells today that came out in China. For example, China even announced, this is their official government said, that China faces a grain supply gap by 2020 of 130 million tons of grain. This is not inconsequential, people, and now they're claiming that it's all partially because of the fact that rural people are moving to the cities, they don't have enough labor, etc. But what I've always told you, China cannot feed itself. And China's inability to feed itself is going to become more acute as time goes on, especially in the near term as we watch this devastation along the Yangtze River. So what does this mean for us? I think this means that the Chinese Communist Party is in a very dangerous position. I think that there are many people in the countryside of China who are feeling betrayed right now. I think if we look back at the floods in 1998, it took 3 months for that water to recede from these rural areas. I think that we're going to have not just famine. I think that we're going to have some problems with communicable diseases that come out of things like this, potentially cholera and other things. We ran some B-roll earlier of hundreds and hundreds of dead animals. One thing else that I think people should think about, the Chinese government is still claiming, Raheem, that only 161 people have been killed or missing in this entire thing. Now,
are they claiming that 161 people have been reported killed or missing, or
reported killed or missing?
Right.
So they are playing this thing very close to the vest. I think what is very much a tell for our Western audience, and I do this all day long, go and check the Google News on flooding in China. There is nothing there. And really, this is a shout out to our Western media, Raheem, because they're not covering it either. Right. I can understand Chinese media trying to avoid it, but why about the New York Times and the Washington Post and the Los Angeles Times? This is something that needs to be talked about.
Well, in the sense that there are even or rather many Western reporters left in China to cover this stuff. I mean, a lot of people have been kicked out, and the ones that have been kicked out, you would imagine will still have source networks, even if they're not in the country, would have source networks in the country, and then they wouldn't have the Damoclean sword of the CCP hanging over their necks in the sense that they couldn't further then kick them out. So you wonder why this reporting isn't happening at all from local centres, even from places as like the Australia bureaus and things like that could cover this stuff.
Well, like for example, they're saying that anybody in China who puts video of the floods on WeChat, etc., they're coming after you, and they're taking down those videos. They do not want people to see this. The other thing that's very interesting is that they seem to be changing the data on the flow rates above the Three Gorges Dam, even the level at the Three Gorges Dam. There was a live stream that was playing for a long time of the Three Gorges Dam. That's been off for the last 10 hours, or it's been like a static screen, right, with no movement on it. So I really think that we need to pay attention to this. I really think that we need to say a prayer for the Chinese people, but this may be the straw that breaks the camel's back here.
包括我们严博士这些天，大家觉得很静是吧？亲爱的兄弟姐妹们，每到大事之前，我们都很安静的。我们都很安静的，是吧？等着啊！只要不开始调查中共的病毒，啊，严博士的爆料还没到关键，是吧？得有人调查才行，还得立法。还有呢，战友们想想，什么情况下，我们的英雄科学家能改变世界的游戏规则，能成为爆料革命新中国联邦砸向共产党的那个重锤，啪啪啪，什么情况？想想，有点耐心啊，搂不住。我们的英雄科学家绝对是天使啊，你们会懂的。
巴西一天内报告了近5万例新增感染，韩国每日确诊感染病例激增，创5个月来新高。随着感染病例激增，夏威夷首府收紧了限制措施。澳大利亚与阿斯利康签署潜在的疫苗购买协议。巴西卫生监管部门已经批准了强生公司实验性疫苗最后阶段的试验。以色列约有110名中国建筑工人感染 CCP 病毒。在美联储会议纪要公布前，国债收益率微跌，美中紧张局势持续。标普500指数创纪录，纳斯达克再创新高。在华尔街创纪录高点之后，欧洲市场开盘小幅上涨。川普总统说，中国对世界所做的事情是不可想象，并且指出，如果拜登当选，中国将拥有美国。